Awesome. So this is Blockchain 101, and I'm Barbara Bickham. I'm the founder and Chief Technology Officer of Trailyn Ventures, and this is what we're going to chat on today. So I'm going to talk about myself for a minute. What is a blockchain? How does a blockchain work? Use cases, careers, and some takeaways. And then questions, if you guys have questions. So again, I'm Barbara Bickham. I'm the founder and CTO of Trailyn Ventures. Trailyn Ventures helps put companies on blockchains, but we do more than just blockchain work. We do anything in emerging tech. So we work with blockchain, AI, AR, IoT, those top four. This is a little bit about me. My tech journey, I have a computer science degree from Berkeley, very traditional career for the first kind of 15 years of my career. Got into private equity and angel investing, came out, went back to my coding roots, became a CTO. I'm doing that. And then I also run a fund here in LA as well. So what even is a blockchain? A lot of people ask me, what is a blockchain? A blockchain is four things. It's distributed, not all in one place, or decentralized, same thing. You'll hear both words. It's encrypted, private, and protected. So most blockchains use something called asymmetric encryption. So what does that mean? You sometimes hear about don't lose your private key. What is the public key? There's a public-private key pair. Basically what that means is if you have some text and then you encrypt it, you need the private key to decrypt it. So basically it's a way for you to kind of decouple the encryption and decryption text, and it enables it to be a lot more secure that way. There are other encryption methods, but this is the one that blockchains happen to have. Hello, everyone. Immutable, permanent record. So what that means is that you can't change it. It's not changeable. And this particular item always seems to get forgotten in the blockchain conversation. Most people want to be able to have the ability to change the record. You can change the record. You put another block on the chain. But normally if you change or delete a block, it basically invalidates all other blocks behind it, because a blockchain is literally a chain of blocks. It's literally that. And it's a ledger, debit and credit. So this is Etherscan. This is exactly what it looks like. You have a hash, you have a time or timestamp, an age. You have where it went from, where it went to, and the amount. So this is basically what goes onto a blockchain. So what is DLT? You may hear that term as well. So DLT is basically a blockchain. It has all the elements of a blockchain. It's distributed, it's secure, it's immutable, and it's also a ledger, time-stamped. So don't think that DLT is different. It's really not. It's literally the same thing. Blockchains are programmable. A lot of them have smart contracts and operate with smart contracts. A blockchain can be anonymous or not anonymous. So they could be created as anonymous or not anonymous. And then unanimous has to do with consensus, which is what we'll talk about in a few slides here. But basically, it's like, how do you go about validating what goes onto a blockchain? So really very similar. I would say almost identical. So how does a blockchain work? So normally I'd have a video here, but I heard video doesn't work too well. So I'll explain it. So when someone requests a transaction or someone wants to put a block onto the blockchain, it goes into the network, which is made up of nodes or various types of computers that are distributed or not in one place. It goes into the request, and then it gets validated. The validation is usually done based on the consensus algorithm, but it's done algorithmically via math. I'll put it that way. Once it's verified, then it can go onto the block. Now, the unique thing about most blockchains is that when you put a block onto the chain, you are actually have the whole entire chain on your node. So you know that that's like validly going onto the blockchain. And so a lot of people, and then once it goes on there, it's complete. Now, if it's not validated properly, you're going to get kind of something that says, hey, this block is no good. And so it'll be recorded as no good, and it just won't go on the blockchain. So that's the difference between a good block and a bad block. So when nodes are trying to determine what goes on, you know, why do you need the whole entire blockchain or the whole entire chain on your node in order to make sure that it's good? This is a security mechanism. So in order for people to really hack a blockchain, you would have to take half of the nodes, one half. So let's say you had 10 nodes. You would have to take 5 nodes and basically, you know, that do some nefarious things in order to make sure that those blocks were tampered with. And so it makes it very difficult from a hacking perspective also to take over, you know, half of a blockchain. Like, can you imagine taking over half of Ethereum? That would be very difficult. But even if you did, you would have to have 1/2 plus 1%, so 51%, in order to make sure that your way became the way. And so it makes it very difficult from a hacking perspective between that and the encryption for people to kind of tamper with these blocks. Now, this particular example that's on this slide has to do with cryptocurrency. I don't really talk about cryptocurrency except to say that it's the first practical use of a blockchain. And I'm going to take questions at the end. Tech stack. So let's talk about kind of like, I talk about what is a blockchain, but what is inside of a blockchain? So they call it Web 3.0, Web 4.0. You might hear Web 4.0, you know, Internet 4.0, Web 4.0, Web 3.0. But this is basically a blockchain stack. All these layers must be there, or else this is not, it's not a blockchain, period. It's just not. So basically DApp browser. So that's kind of how are you going to be able to look at your application or your user interface? How are you going to interface in with the actual product or blockchain that you're building? Then you need application hosting. This is like, where are you going to place your nodes? Where are you going to place your blockchain? So it could be Amazon, they have blockchain, IBM has blockchain, Google not so much. Although you could put one there, you could fork Ethereum and put it there. So, I mean, it's just basically like, where are you going to place your blockchain in your nodes? Then there's the actual application that you're building. So what are you making on the blockchain? What is the actual application? And we'll get into some practical applications here in a few slides. Then there's the state transition machine. So how do you go between consensus and the application layer, this DApp layer? Then there's consensus. Consensus is the thing that determines which blocks go on the blockchain. So there's consensus and then there's governance. Governance is slightly different. But consensus is the mathematical algorithms that you use to put blocks on blockchains. And so, like, for example, proof of work, which is done via mining, is a consensus mechanism. Proof of stake is a consensus mechanism. That's basically where you're like, hey, I've the proof of stake. Hey, I've put up, you know, 1,000 Ethereum, and therefore now I can have access to your network. That's the proof of stake. EOS uses something called delegated proof of stake, which is a combination of kind of mining and staking. So you have to put up so much for their resources, because they actually use resources as their kind of mining mechanism. They don't really use traditional mining as we know it. So those are different consensus mechanisms. Sometimes you might hear about people wanting to do, like, I want to do proof of wine, I want to do proof of something else. When you hear that, you know that they're now working at that consensus layer. Then there's the P2P layer. That's basically how are you going to distribute this blockchain around. And then there's the IP layer, which is actually, when you hear about internet protocol, it's not like HTTPS or anything like that. It's more about how are you going to communicate, how are these blockchains going to communicate together? And so, right now, we're using TCP/IP, which is good, but then there are other layers built on top of that that make the blockchain protocols communicate together. So there's a special layer for blockchains. And so that's why they're calling it Internet 4.0, because people are like, hey, the internet wasn't built to handle this heavy layers of applications and security like the blockchain can. So when you hear people saying they're writing a protocol, basically what they're telling you is that they're writing a whole nother blockchain. Like literally they're writing a whole one, because you have to have all these elements in order for it to be a blockchain. So how do we even use this? I get asked this all the time. So, a lot of people think smart contracts are smart. They are and they aren't. But here's a way to kind of do things in a legal way. There's law, there's chain of custody. How did particular evidence happen? IP rights, that's very important. How do you validate and verify that your intellectual property is yours? Dispute, let's say there was a dispute and who ended up paying whom for what? When did the payment go? Notary, so you can say, hey, I ended up, signing this housing document. Ooh, this was painful. So, like, I remember I sold my house about a year ago, and I had to get all these paper documents signed by a notary. And I understand that notaries can have a lot of potential fraud in it, because people may sign things that's not them. They may say it's them, and the person kind of slid and didn't get 100% of the proof. So how do you make sure that these types of things are being done in a proper way? So blockchain can record all that. Like, yes, Barbara really came in. She really signed this. She did it on this date. And there's just a record of that there. So here's an example of what we're doing at the ACLA group. This is one example. We are actually doing corporate records on the blockchain. So this is kind of what this looks like. There's a hash. This is actually longer than 234 days ago. But basically what's in here is, what's the company? Where's the jurisdiction of the company? Where's the address? If it was doing some type of tokenization, is there a token associated with it? Where's the company registered? Who owns it? So this address here that says address is the address that's attached to the wallet owner of this company. And then what are the websites? So, there's several, this is kind of the metadata around a company, but you can enter this in for multiple companies. So we could take what you did from a registration side and put it into a contract, and then it's on the blockchain forever. And you have that in conjunction with your paper document as well. And a lot of people have asked me about voting. So in my mind, there really is no different. You have a vote, so you own a wallet and it has a slate of people in it. You can vote for who you want, and then that's recorded on the blockchain. Very simplistically done from a technological perspective, less easy from a political perspective. So we all know about banking. I'm actually working on a really great project, just made an announcement today on that project called Project New Dawn. And we're doing kind of serving the unbanked and underbanked, but at the digital dollar level. So remittance is a fairly common one, transferring money from one place to another. Clearing and settlement, I'm going to go through that a little bit, but this has been a very common use case of the blockchain in the banking space. There have been a lot of people that have done clearing and settling on the blockchain. Bonded out, you sell the bond and it's all recorded on the blockchain. Selling kind of trade finance has kind of been done on the blockchain, so that's a clearing and settling area as well. We haven't gotten to the crypto banking yet, and I'm still waiting for this record sharing and storage. But I mean, we were supposed to have a paperless office 20 years ago, so still waiting for that. All right, so let's say, I mean, we kind of do this at the ACLA group. So let's say somebody wanted to make, instead of a purchase of maple syrup, let's say they wanted to make a purchase of our Fuego Fino, which is our alcohol, from the alcohol place that makes a currency. So then their transaction can be converted onto the blockchain, distributed across nodes. Then it's validated and verified with the actual company. So Fuego Fino will be the company. Then you would hash that transaction, put the block on the blockchain, and validate and verify that it's legal and legitimate. And then once it's added to the blockchain, then we can send out the actual alcohol to the person. So why is this helpful and useful? Because this is an efficiency speed up. Because once you have the ability to cut the time down from 4 weeks or 6 weeks to 5 to 10 minutes, or even let's say it was 1 hour for this whole entire loop to close to shipping, that is a massive speed up in the economy, in the flow of money, and of your business. I mean, you can really help grow and scale your business if you're not waiting 4 to 6 weeks for your actual syrup or your alcohol or your other business transaction to occur. So that's a huge advantage for utilizing a blockchain. Now, a lot of people ask me about media and entertainment. I happen to know several people, this is music related, but some of this applies not only to music, but also to TV, to video streaming, and things of that nature. You know, royalties is a huge thing in the music business. Like, how do you go about sharing all these different pieces of music, pieces of talent, you know, who produced what record? Royalties become a very, very tricky thing because they're almost like literally in perpetuity, plus some years after you die. So how do you make sure that those monies are constantly being paid? And then we kind of talked about revenue share. How do you split everything up? And then I think like payments and micropayments is important, because how do you really pay an artist? And that kind of goes back to the revenue share as well. And then how do you handle the intellectual property? So like, I created this music and now it's going into a movie or going into a TV show or it's going into something else. How do I even track that and make sure that those contracts are even signed properly? So this kind of goes into the labs. The labs is a company that does kind of preserves your rights for music and what's happening there. It can also apply to television. It can also apply to movies. And so it kind of helps music creators collaborate and make sure that they are paid in a proper way. So this is kind of how the labs works. All right, so how do you even get into the blockchain space? People have asked me how I've gotten into it, so I'll talk about that a little bit. So I'm a chief technology officer. I have a computer security background, so I understand. My job at the security company was all the encryption. So I did. There's something in security called AAA: authentication, authorization, and audit. Those are the three, and I think there's another A now. They've added one, but in that arena of what I did was I actually kept track of authorization, authentication. I kept track of all the encryption for the company that I worked for, because we had NSA level encryption in our product and we couldn't send it off to certain places. So we couldn't send it here, we couldn't send it here. So not only did I have to keep track of all the different encryption methods and what was going on from the encryption side, cryptography side, but also I had to make sure like we weren't shipping it off to the places we weren't supposed to be doing it. So that's my security background. I've been architecting and designing systems for many years. So, I mean, I could pretty much put all the different pieces together that's required from a blockchain. Distributed, I mean, I've worked with distributed systems. I worked a lot on the OS levels and layers and protocol layers prior to this. So I understood like about making sure things could talk across multiple different machines and multiple different areas. And then immutable, I'm a award-winning REST API writer, and REST APIs are immutable fundamentally. So that's how I kind of got into it. But, you know, as you can see, there are many roles here that are required for a blockchain team. And there's some roles that are actually missing. I mean, we have legal, engineering, marketing, business dev, Blockchain architect, that's kind of my, at my level, CTO. System architect, I can actually do both. Developer, I do that less. User researcher, networking engineer. So what's missing off of here? We have marketing officer, but we need UI UX people, more UI UX people. I mean, I have user experience designer, but we don't have enough of those in here. You need IR people, investor relations people. Like, how do you handle investors? How are you going to have people to handle investors? Because that's very important. You had legal consultants here, quality engineers here. That's good. No real product manager either. They have project manager, but who's really like handling the product? And then, the last thing you need here in the blockchain space is a CFO. You need somebody to help you manage your budget. Very important. All right, so here's some key takeaways. Then I'll have some questions. I'll take some questions. I see questions in the chat. Blockchain is going to replace every system. I fundamentally believe that. I mean, once you have the quantum computer and blockchain and AI all combined, that's what I call blockchain in a box. It's going to replace everything. So learn about the technology and how it applies into your industry, because these are things that you can start building for your companies or start evangelizing for your companies. And there are all kinds of parts of the ecosystem that need skill sets. So don't think like, hey, it's too late for me, or I don't know, or, I have to have some special knowledge. You don't. You can take probably what you know and apply it into the blockchain space. So that's me. So let me swap. All right, I see some. Anyone have any questions? If you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, you know what? I'll put my LinkedIn in the chat here. I can show it. How long can okay, so here's one question. How long can a blockchain go? It can go infinitely. If you mean about the size, it can go infinitely. Is a blockchain used in healthcare industry? Absolutely. So I know of several people working on as far as medical records, a lot of medical records, and I know of another company that's doing they're tracking opioids on the blockchain. So for example, if you go to a doctor and they give you a prescription, one of the things about opioid abuse is that you could go to multiple doctors and get multiple prescriptions and have them filled in different pharmacies, or you could take the same prescription and have them filled in different pharmacies. So that particular product helps resolve that problem. So it tracks your prescriptions on the blockchain, and it also has like an app that helps to monitor your opioid consumption. So yes, I mean, the blockchain is very big in the healthcare space. How can crypto coins get stolen if you don't provide anyone with your private keys? Okay, so most of the hacking, stealing, taking that happens usually is an inside job. Your crypto really can't get stolen unless you give them your private keys. Or what happens is, the other thing that happens is, I don't know if you guys are familiar with like SIM swapping. So what happens is your phone has the SIM card in it. And if someone gets access to that number, they have the ability to basically, or it's called SIM jacking actually, take that SIM card information and pretend it's you. So it's like SIM card identity theft. And I have had several friends that this has actually happened to, because they've had a large amount of crypto on your phone versus on their phone. And so it's gotten taken off because their keys were on the phone. So it's also, you also have to be very careful about where you're putting your private keys. Lori, for instance, in clinical trials, not sure how you want to use this in clinical trials. I think that's like a bigger question, to be honest. I mean, I don't quite understand the question about using a blockchain in clinical trials as far as tracking trials, as far as like validating that somebody, okay, we're all in the global pandemic time. So it's like, okay, I have a COVID-19 antibody test. I took it. or I'm testing this vaccine, I took it and these are the results and therefore I want to track that. Is this kind of what you're talking about from a clinical trial issue? Yes, you can have a link to the slides. What about exchanges? Yes, tracking trials. So yes, you can use the blockchain to track trials. I kind of gave an example. Are there examples for the media industry and journalism? So I mean, I know that Steemit attempted to be kind of like a place where not journalists, but like it was almost like a Wikipedia. Actually, the Wikipedia guys made it, and they tried to kind of say, here's some things that people can post and then get paid. So I have seen a couple in the journalism space, but not a ton. Not a ton. More about the role of a lawyer in the blockchain. Okay, so there's no such thing as a blockchain lawyer. That's not a thing. I hear that quite a bit. Hey, I'm a blockchain lawyer. No, you're not. So what are kind of lawyers' roles in the space? Yes, blockchain for voting 2020. I actually know some people. I know two companies specifically working on blockchain voting. But let me finish the blockchain lawyer question. So lawyers can help in several ways. One, they can help with formations of companies. Two, they can help with jurisdictions. So, for example, if you're here in the United States, blockchain companies are going to raise money in a very specific way. If you're in Japan, you're going to do it differently. And if you're Europe, you're going to do it differently. If you're in India, you're going to do it differently. If you're in Africa, you're going to do it differently. So a lawyer really needs to understand kind of the global landscape of fundraising, company formation, because depending upon where you put your company, there are different rules and regulations. Also, from a patent perspective, if you're going to patent a blockchain, your blockchain ideology, which can be done, how do you go about protecting that intellectual property, which creates a massive moat, and then making sure like, hey, IBM doesn't have this, Amazon doesn't, some of them just got these patents. They're not doing anything. So, you also have to be careful, like who else is competing in that patent area. That's a couple of ways lawyers can help in the blockchain space. I don't believe in there's no such thing as a blockchain lawyer. Like I'm a blockchain lawyer. You would have to know so much technology. I mean, it doesn't make sense. It would almost make sense for a lawyer to partner with a technical person and go, hey, like from a patent perspective or even from a work product perspective, like, hey, I'm working with these blockchain companies. What are kind of some of the things I need to look at? Was just meaning to say that is another way to your coins can be stolen without giving up your private keys. Okay. What is the role of a blockchain in the oil and gas industry? So if you think about oil and gas, I did see this. I don't know what happened to this coin, but somebody had a coin on tracking kind of oil and gas purchases, oil and gas futures. And then if you think about shipping or logistics or supply chain, like how do you track, I purchased this oil from a legitimate person, because I also hear that the oil and gas industry is very frothy. And so I purchased this oil and gas, I paid it, it got on the ship, it got from point A to point B. And then when it got to point B, it got to where it was supposed to go. Like, how do you track all that? So some of that can be IoT, clearly. And then some of it can be like all tracked on the blockchain as well as a secondary part. How can a realtor start a career in the blockchain industry? Well, I mean, real estate. Oh, okay. So I sold my house. I said this, and so it was about a year ago now, and it was very painful. First of all, in California, you got to fill out all this. I mean, hundreds. I think I filled out about 200 or 300 pages of paper. It was crazy. That was number one. So how do you make that process more efficient? No, because a lot of these technologies that most people don't think about is there's kind of two things they do: speed up, more efficient, and help reduce kind of revenue. And they, and I don't believe like you should use technology to then displace people. My thing is like, yes, let's use the technology for the base level kind of boring stuff and then move it up the chain. So if you're in the real estate business, actually there's a couple of technologies you should be looking at, not just the blockchain from a kind of efficiency side of like how to, like from, like I said, like notarizing. So when you notarize, I go in and I sign my contract and I notarize certain things like, okay, yes, we're selling this. Yes, we're selling this. Basically I'm signing my life away, and then I notarize it. That's one example. Another example, though, really more important from I think a real estate perspective, is more on the AR side. So, you go in and take these drone pictures. You could do them inside as well, and then use AR to really have a more realistic experience, three-dimensional experience, versus like just having the static flat pictures. And then, you could sell real estate kind of virtually, completely virtually. So really, I think some of these conversations we've been having over the last few days is more like, how do we virtualize everything and make it so that people can really be more efficient and effective in what they do? Okay, so a product designer is critical in the blockchain industry because I'll tell you why. So there's a lot of just engineers out here creating stuff, which is good. But how do you go about putting it into the marketplace? How do you go about making it simple? How do you go about building trust? Like blockchain now is a buzzword. Everyone thinks like, oh, blockchain, I just threw it on a slide. And, a lot of people just don't understand what it is. So a product designer can really help mold and shape what it looks like, what it feels like, what the end user is seeing and feeling. Like, we're in this conference experience, which is pretty cool. But it's like, who designed this? This is actually a pretty nice experience. A lot better than Zoom. A lot better than some of the other webinar things I've been on. So, how do you go about, so somebody came in and had some thinking around designing this product and really making it wonderful, for a wonderful experience for people. So this needs to happen in the blockchain space as well, because there's just like a lot of I'm just going to say crappy products from the user interface side. I mean, they may be great on the protocol level. It might be a great product in general, but as far as like what they're providing, like at the end, very painful. All right. Any other questions? So let's see. I had a couple questions. One about slides. Awesome. Yes, I'll get slides. My LinkedIn is, hold on, let me grab my LinkedIn for you guys. I'll just grab it right here and drop it in here. So please connect with me on LinkedIn. That would be great. Or here's the other way to connect with me on my website, Trailyn. If you guys ever want to have a chat, that's a way to get in touch with me. Can I explain the concept of a blockchain? Yes, a blockchain is 4 words: distributed, not in one place, encrypted, private and protected. It's immutable, permanent record, and it's a ledger, debit and credit. That's it. 4 words. Undisputed. Undisputed. That's the 4 words. No one has said that that's incorrect. No one technical and no one non-technical. So that's a blockchain in 4 words. Any other questions? Anything else you guys want to know about? No. Cryptocurrency is a practical use of a blockchain. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot to it. We don't hire. I don't. We're not hiring a product designer at my company, no. But some companies maybe. I mean, I usually work at the CEO level, so they usually are the ones with the implementation of the. How important do I think the blockchain will be in the future? I'll repeat what I said on the takeaway slide. The blockchain is going to replace all infrastructure. All infrastructure. So my prediction that I did last year, and I'll say it again, and it's in my, I'm writing a book, so it's in the book as well. But the prediction I said last year is that when the quantum computer comes, the blockchain will go on top of the quantum computer with an AI. So AI and blockchain on a quantum computer will be infinitely not only infinitely scalable, but it will be not hackable. So the blockchain will not be hackable. And so a lot of people say, hey, is the quantum computer going to hack the blockchain? No. Because unless you can afford that, I mean, yeah, go for it. But most people are not going to be able to afford a quantum computer for a while. So once that happens, the AI will handle the consensus and governance sections and load on the quantum computers. And then, you know, the blockchain needs to be distributed. So you'll have several quantum computers. You'll distribute it amongst that. And then the AIs can kind of handle the load across those computers. So, I mean, blockchain is going to replace everything. So today we had an announcement, Project New Dawn, which is our digital dollar initiative for unbanked and underbanked. So if you think about what's happened here in the United States, we were trying to do like a stimulus package. And it was kind of, you know, and then we were trying to give out these PPP loans. We were trying to do all these loans. So this is this Project New Dawn is solving some of these distribution problems of money. How do you get money into the hands of people? That's what we're doing at the ACLA group as well. The ACLA group is doing two things. We're doing sustainability carbon tracking, and then we're also solving the problem of distribution into the hands of companies. Encrypted. Encrypted. I'll have to put, I don't know, I'll have to put the slide somewhere. I don't have just a regular link like I can drop in here. I don't do predictions like that on coins. I don't do that. Then someone will say, oh, Barb didn't say anything about that. You have to do your own homework on coins. That's why I don't talk about cryptocurrency. Too many holy wars. Anything else before we go to the next speaker? I want to thank you guys for awesome. I want to thank you guys for coming. Hopefully you learned something. You know, this is blockchain 101 and a half because you guys got a little bit of the stack. That stack one is a little bit more in depth, so I didn't go super techie. But thank you guys all for so much, and I'll figure out where to put the slides. I'll ask them, stick them somewhere. I guess I don't know who's in the Slack or who's not in the Slack, but if you're in the Slack, I'll stick them in there. But if you're not, I'll stick them somewhere around here. Awesome. Thank you, ladies, so much. Have a great rest of your day.